You know, we call this thing faith, trusting confidence. Faith is how we access the promises of God. It's really, we're just talking about our trusting confidence that we place more in the words of God than we do in the lies of the enemy. You know, I remember one time I was at home and I was just starting to get a bit of a glimpse of how much God loved me. And I remember being in the kitchen, had my worship music on, I was praising God, and there was this knock at the door. And I went to open the door, and we had 3 little kids at home, and Hannah, I think, was a newborn because it was like January. She was a newborn, and then we had a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old. It's kind of busy. It's kind of intense. But and I went to open the door, and as I went to open the door, I just turned the latch there, and it was forced open, and there was a big man outside my front door trying to push his way in. He was really like shouting and swearing at me, and he was super aggressive, and he started to tell me that I had taken his money and that he was some sort of debt collector.
Wow. And
he was going to come into my house and burn my house down, and all the things, horrible, ugly things that he was going to do to me and the kids. And you know, it turns out that we had, he was, I didn't know the man, but we had an employee that we had to fire. It was a bit of a long story. He'd stolen a car from our car front, and you know, kind of have to fire people at that point, don't you? And he'd gotten into some trouble with some really nasty people, like the local debt collectors, loan sharks, mafia, whatever. And when he got into trouble with them, he passed his debt on to this guy and said, "These people have got your money, go collect it." And that happened to be at our house. Right. And so when they shut up, I mean, he had an agenda, this man, and he was not going to stop until he got into our house and did whatever. And Ashley was off at work. And I tell you what happened in the middle of that. The mama bear in me rose up. And
don't mess with Mama Bear.
Don't mess with Mama Bear. I'm like, oh no, Sonny Jim, you're not coming in. You're not going to come. You're going to come in here. And you know, it's amazing when we are focused on our relationship with God. The love of God is a powerful force that protects us, and fear has no place in that realm of protection. And what happened, you know, I mean, I've mentioned previously, but I was quite introvert, actually. I wasn't, and I'm only 5 foot tall. I'm not like a really big person. People meet me and they say, "Oh, you're much smaller in real life than you are in television."
They make you taller on television?
They do. I don't know what happens, but I look bigger on television. But I opened the door, and what came out of me in that moment was faith. It was the opposite of fear. All of the natural circumstances would really usually have generated fear, right? That would have been a normal response to that. But faith came out of me, and I just opened the door wide open, and I looked him in the eyes, and I pointed my little finger in his nose, and I said, "Who do you think you are coming at me?" And what came out of my mouth, I don't even remember the words, but I mean...
Did you say uncircumcised Philistine?
Well,
that's what it sounds like.
That sounds like David and Goliath, doesn't it? Who do you think you are, you uncircumcised Philistine, coming against the armies of the living God? I've got a covenant with the Lord Almighty. But instead of fear coming out, what came out of me was faith and power. And I just started speaking right back at him. "Who do you think you are coming around to collect money from me?" And I mean, I just started speaking to me, and it was almost like with every word that came out of my mouth, I was swinging a punch at him. Now, I never touched him, but he looked at me, and I could see fear in his eyes. The fear of the Lord was in his eyes. And he started actually staggering backwards down the garden path until he was about, I don't know, 10, 15 feet from me. And he took one last look at me, and he was barely able to stand up. He hung on to the fence post where our gate was, like he was trying to steady himself. He took one last look at me, and he took off running down the road. I mean, I never touched him, and he never laid a finger on me. But we exchanged many words, but my words were words of power, amen. And he ran off scared. And the police, I mean, I shut the front door, and at that point, I think the faith left me in that moment, and I melted like a puddle of jelly, you know, on the floor. And fear kind of swept over me in that moment. But when we decide to keep ourselves in the love of God, to keep ourselves focused, you know, Isaiah 26 says this, it says, "He who keeps his mind stayed upon upon God, is kept in perfect peace." Peace is the antidote for fear in our lives. We can't be in faith, we can't be in peace and fear at the same time.